Good morning, everyone. This has been a time this last couple of months when a lot of people have been in a lot of different places, including me. I just returned from 3 weeks in Ananda Sangha, our community in Europe, and we were gathered for a convention about creativity and the arts, and I don't want to just give you a travelogue, just telling you what you missed. Doesn't seem fair. But nonetheless, there were ideas and inspirations that came from that seem relevant to all of us. So I'm going to do my best to try to weave it together, starting from a place that may seem quite distant. As some of you know, thanks not to my own efforts, but to Ishani Ebge, who manages my social media stuff, I'm an influencer. When there was a poster in the community in Assisi for a weekend program, and that was my claim to fame, that I was an influencer. I mean, I'm old enough to be embarrassed by it. But of course, it's just vocabulary. The English language is exceedingly flexible, and new realities are created, and so new words have to be defined because it is something that wasn't there in the Merriam-Webster dictionary that my father gave me when I was 15. I mean, I didn't check, but I doubt if it was in there by the same meaning. And here's the weird thing that I just realized the other day when Ishani and I were making some recordings, because she's extremely effective at knowing what people are interested in, coincides exactly with what my experience has been traveling around the world. What people are interested in is what's going to happen next. And it's not a casual interest. It's not an eager, oh, my birthday comes next week kind of interest. It's, wow, this is a weird world. Suryani and Tandava were in Norway for their delayed honeymoon. And Tandava said it was 90 degrees above the Arctic Circle. Whoa. You know, things are not the same, quite apart from lots of other stuff that we can read about in the paper every day. Just there's instability is extremely impressive. Swami Kriyananda has stood on this spot in this temple many, many times over the years. And I have sat in those seats and prayed that he would talk about something else. When he would start talking about Master's predictions in 1952, you know, which is a whole generation ago now, about a lot of what we see, only much more. Starting in 1972, when Swami wrote The Road Ahead and put all of Yogananda's predictions for very turbulent times into a small booklet, small but mighty booklet, Swami Kriyananda has been compelled to remind us that we are in a transition from the age of matter into the age of energy. And when we move from matter to energy, a lot of matter gets shattered. And it just gets shattered in all kinds of ways. And Swami felt obligated as a disciple of Yogananda to share this important teaching. What we mostly want to hear from Master and about him is that we have a portable paradise and all we have to do is meditate and we're going to feel God's presence. And that's what we really want to hear. We want to hear about the joy. We're not all that interested in the challenges. And the challenges just creep up behind us and whack us on the back of the head, whether we want them or not. But what I realized with Ishani is that where Swami was the spokesperson for these predictions, and we always thought that Swamiji would just take us through turbulence back into peace again, which is Master's predictions, temporary turbulence leading to peace. We thought we would huddle under Swami's skirt, so to speak, and just have him take us through, but the lucky guy got off the planet, you know, at the age of 86 in 2013, 2012? 13. In any case. And so I find out that this is me who's talking all the time. The most popular video, little reel or little short one, has the brilliant title of, Yes, It's Going to Get Worse. Which caused everybody to click on it. Yes, it's going to get worse. And you didn't have to say what. We knew exactly what we meant. I'm going to England for 2 weeks. The whole tour is, you were born for these times, which is what we're trying to do, which is saying that this is all, challenge is not something to be afraid of. Challenge is our opportunity to find out things we didn't know, to become bigger and more powerful in the process. It's not really my favorite method of getting free. My favorite method of getting free is to just go out into the forest and chant Om, until something really happy happens to us. But that doesn't, we were born for these times, we were born for something else. Now I'm going to go back to Italy, where we were talking about dancing and painting and doing theater and singing songs and being free in our self-expression, which we got pretty darn good at it. Just after being together for 3 weeks, we had a ton of fun doing things that people are quite inhibited about doing. I've been to hundreds of kirtans in the last 50 years, and being not a dancer in this lifetime, but having the samskars of a dancer. First time I saw classical Indian dance, which was actually, this troupe came to Ananda village in the 70s. I don't think there were any Indians among them. They were all Americans, but they were all highly trained in classical dance. We had a presentation, I believe I don't know where it was, but it was outside. And at a certain point, it started getting dark. It was at the meditation retreat. We didn't have any electricity. And it started getting dark, and somehow we hadn't thought of this. So somebody drove a truck up and turned the lights on to the stage so that they could keep dancing. First time I saw it, literally, I was so moved, I had to walk away. I just couldn't bear it. It was just so beautiful to me and so evocative of who knows what. I mean, all of us, we think we're just this one body, these one experiences. We have countless inexplicable experiences that are only inexplicable because we're so narrow in our concept. This is just what our reading was talking about. God hides. We pop out as little babies and we think that's all we are. And then we get to be this one and we think this is all we are. So when an American girl who's never been out of the United States, me, sees classical Indian dance and just finds it overwhelming on countless levels, it's perfectly explicable. It's just not this incarnation. We're living this enormous mystery, which is why the fact that times are going to be turbulent for a while, and they are becoming so and will become more so, is like, it's no big deal. It's like we've done this so many times. We've been born, we've died, we've struggled, we've had easy ones, we've had hard ones, we've had tragic ones, we've had triumphant ones. And then our little brain just goes back down to here. And that's, for some reason, God thinks that's a good idea. I don't know why. People ask me all the time, why this, why that? I don't know. It's just the way it is. But it's better to cooperate with what is and make the best of it than to spend all your time just sort of beating on the door that won't open, asking somebody to explain it to you. You begin to cooperate with it, then you begin to understand, then we begin to learn. So one of the unique characteristics about the way Master, and I was talking about dance, I've been in so many kirtans when I just wanted the room to bust out, and just everybody get off their little meditation cushions. And I know they're doing this all over the country now because kirtan is a thing, but they're not dancing in a way that appeals to me, let's just put it like that. That does not seem to enhance. But when it was like toward the very end of our time in Assisi, and we were pretty loose by that point, I accidentally started the whole room dancing. And I did it I didn't mean to. I was often the guest, and so I'm sitting right in the front seat. We had this book launch for Swami's book about art. It was just a beautiful program with incredible music, and just everything was wonderful. And at the end, this kirtan ensemble just starts playing. We'd been there for 2 hours, so I was ready to go. So I stood up and started walking down the aisle, but I was walking down the aisle like this. And then all of a sudden, other people are standing up, like this. Pretty soon, there's a little circle going. I grabbed the front of the circle and made it a line. And there was this French girl there. about this big, this strong professional clown, no less, and actress of various kinds. So she got at the front of the line, and then things got really interesting, you know. But we finally had 100 people in a circle around the room. Joya, 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 sempre nova joya. Joy, joy, always new joy. Whoa, there was no roof because it was a dome, but it took the roof off, you know, and it wasn't, I know chanting is meant to go to meditation, and it's all very important, but there's also a place for just sheer exuberance. You know, just a place where we're not thinking anymore about what I look like or whether I'm good at this. And this is one of the changes, and this is one of the causes for turbulence. Let's talk about it in the spiritual realm. All of us, in our previous incarnations, when we were serious about God in Kali Yuga, which is the age that's just passed, there was no reconciling ordinary life with spiritual life. Life was just too hard. Being female, I think about that. There was no birth control. Women just had baby after baby after baby, often died young, just being worn out with that and the taking care of it and the home and all the hard labor. There wasn't a lot of time for God. So if you wanted to do that, you went away. And you got one of those wonderful little stone cells with a little rock for your pillow. This to me is all just glorious. Or you got to go up into one of those caves. I was somewhere, I think it was in Greece, and there was some old monastery that we visited, and there was one of those little stone cells. And, you know, I just got into that cell and, you know, just leave it all behind. Just forget about it. Who cares what the world is doing? Civilizations rise and fall. They just keep rising and falling. It's really boring. You know, it's always really and only about God. And the way that Kali Yuga, the form, the age of matter, tells you to do that is you just take everything else and you just suppress it. And then when you go to the Western world, you become exceedingly obedient. You know, I think of myself as female to the Mother Superior or to the Father who's the order, head of the order. They tell you what to do and you do it, which is a certain stage of relaxation. Because you're not responsible, really. You're just obedient. And you can learn to do that. You can just be that way. But there's a whole other dimension. And for the time, it was not wrong. But that's not the time we're in anymore. The time we're in now is not an institution and a priest and the dogma tells you whether you're saved or not saved. You know, I've looked at some of this theology that gets spun, even I've seen it done on Yogananda's path, where you make a promise. You say that something is true. If you do this, then God will bless you. And then the person over here naturally asks, but if I do some of it and not all of it, where is the balance point? Will he still bless me? So on this side, you have to start answering. You know, you have 4 chances and then you're damned, okay? What if the 5th time is by accident? Well, gee, I'm not sure. You know, and so pretty soon you've just spun out all this stuff that frankly the person saying it doesn't have any idea. But once you start down that road, you just have to keep going because if the institution is right, it always has to be right. So Master came and just knocked the whole thing down by saying individually, the only place that God can be known is not in the church, not in the temple, not in the cave even. It's the human nervous system. The place where God can be known is the human nervous system. As a wordsmith, that juxtaposition has always, I've always enjoyed it. Human nervous system is such a weird, unpoetic phrase. I mean, isn't there something? And he uses, you know, the highway of the spine and all these other things like that, the airplane route to God. But this is just the human nervous system, the only place God can be known. But still, we still have a desire for this imposed upon us, given to us from the outside sense of security. Am I doing it right? In many ways, and of course the past is the past. You can't get it back. The early years of Ananda, even Swami Kriyananda's leadership was not was not even widely accepted. You had to know it intuitively. None of the accoutrements of spiritual leadership that belonged to him by right, he repudiated all of them and sort of kept it out of our culture. So when you became part of Ananda, you had no external way of knowing how you were supposed to behave. You had to just become genuinely spontaneous. And you had to genuinely act from what you actually knew. And it's inevitable that things will grow and change. And so then there becomes a culture, and people can see what the culture is. And it's not bad, it's just different. That's all, it's just different. But ultimately, you can't experience God except in your own nervous system. And we have a new way of seeking the divine. And it was brought to us by Master himself. Master wrote music, Master wrote books, Master wrote lots of beautiful poetry. You know, he was a creative artist. You don't really think of Jesus as being a creative artist. He did many wonderfully creative things in the sense that they weren't there until he manifested them. So the very nature of spirituality is creative, because look at this world that everybody thinks is so real. You have to have a lot of imagination to have it even occur to you that, nice as they are, they don't know what they're talking about. You know, they're just making it up. It's Dana Anderson, who was the inspiration. She's the artist who did the painting over here and the painting back there. She is just publishing a book, which is basically a diatribe against education, at least the first 30 or 40 pages are, in which, you know, success is based on how exactly you can replicate what already exists. And as a painter, she's conscious of how many children art is just ruined for them in kindergarten, because they come in and they do something that doesn't look the same. And so they quickly learn that it has to be the same. And you go through almost every other aspect of education these days, and you're rewarded when you can replicate what is already known. Even the higher you get up into the academic world, the more you have to take into account what everybody else already said, you know? But genius and true success and true innovation always comes from someone often who's uneducated, or at least looks at it and says, well, just because they all say so doesn't mean it's true, for heaven's sakes. It just means that they all say so. Swami Kriyananda remarked, or no, it's not his, but he often quoted it. He said, the majority is always wrong. The minority has at least a better chance of being right. But it isn't, just because a lot of people think it, isn't what's so. It's individual attunement. And it's the capacity to be in tune and then the courage to express it. And one of the ways that we all do this intuitively is we paint, we dance, we sing, we tell jokes, we tell stories. We just draw out of our own reality our perception of the universe or a beautiful vision of what it could be. And often the replication of that over and over begins to bring that new reality into place. And Swami Kriyananda took the idea of being a spiritual teacher and a creative artist. I mean, he just went as far as you could go. He wrote 150 books. Some of them are short, but none of them, not one of them, is in any way mediocre. He wasn't going for quantity, he went for quality. And all the music that he wrote, plays, architecture, what to speak of all the teaching he did, the opposite of sit there and wait until somebody tells you what to do. It was, what is passing through me and how can I be an instrument? And it is the way of energy, you see? Because the way of energy is always doing something. It's always finding a creative new outlet. Swamiji was always trying to get Ananda to lead with art. And already, to a very large extent, we lead with music. And countless people have come here because of the music. You know, they hear the philosophy, they like it, but the music moves the heart. And it doesn't matter what we think. We can have the most wonderful thoughts in the world, But until we're hungry, until we feel something, we don't do anything about it. But we think in more normal ways. Swami would say to us, art doesn't pay the rent at the beginning, but in the end, for a movement like this, where we have to get people's feelings, we have to have them want another way of life. That's all, another way of being. And when you hear the music, when you hear the chanting this morning, when you hear the beautiful poetry of the whispers which Master wrote, it's just all of a sudden, you know the concept, but you feel the desire to be part of it. That's what happened a few weeks ago, or when we were there in Italy, and the whole room was up in a giant circle. And it was like, this is what, for this hour were we born. Now, coming back to the beginning of, yes, it's going to get worse, which is where I started on all of this. If things are not what we expect them to be, if things are not what they have always been, if the methods we have used until now don't work, what is the solution to that? Let me think. Oh yes, creativity. Absolutely. It's just having within ourselves, however we've trained ourselves to do it. And of course, artistic self-expression is one of the best ways to train yourself to do it, which is, it doesn't have to be the way it's always been. And if it always been is just change and it's not there, what we need is the creativity to think of another way of being. Just as simple as that. Think about Steve Jobs, who was highly influenced by Master, by Paramhansa Yogananda. Autobiography of a Yogi was the only book on the iPad he invented. He just looked at the way it was and he said, no, I don't think so. I think there's a whole nother way to be. And for us, we have not merely an opportunity, responsibility is the word I want to use, to take care of ourselves. We are also the ray of grace, the new avatar that's been sent specifically to move the world from Kali Yuga into Dwapara Yuga. And we're just a continuation of what Krishna did and Buddha did and Jesus did, meaning they all come to change civilization. Civilization is marked by the advent of these avatars, and that's who Yogananda was. That's who Master was. That's Swami Kriyananda came to help, and guess what? We were born for this too. And what we need, if we want to be of benefit to people who are nervous and afraid, we have to just be able to say, oh no, I think we can do this. Yes, that's how we've always lived. That's what we've always expected. We've kind of hunkered down into this point of view, and now it's not really there anymore. Let's just realize God is recreating the universe all the time. This moment that we're in right now, as soon as I finish the sentence, gone forever. Now we're in a new place. Why would this be upsetting to us? I recall reading, and you have countless examples of this, when there was a very difficult earthquake in Japan a few years ago, and even with their light paper houses, everybody was out on the streets, camping on the streets, and many people wrote, what a wonderful time it was. I often think when we can't live the way we're living now, and whatever might change it, we're going to be so relieved. That's actually what Master said. America will have half as much wealth and will be twice as happy. Just like that. When we were talking in Italy about music, dancing, theater, and so on, and they read something about Master, about creative art being the salvation of the planet, or maybe Swami was the one who said it. Ever since we bought Ananda Farm, which we did in 2013, because of Swami telling us all the time we needed to grow our own food and have another place to be. That time, both of the giant greenhouses were there. So I just had this picture, because I've been waiting since 1972 for the planet to collapse. So 2013, here we are. I always visualized all of us just camping out in those two big greenhouses, mat after mat after mat. And after we finished growing food, which is the other thing we would have to do out in the fields, we'd all come together. We'd read poetry, we'd sing, we'd dance, we'd play P.G. Wodehouse stories, we'd do theater. Like, what else would we do? With all that time on our hands, what would we do with all that time on our hands? We would be creative. We would do things that made us happy. We would express our hearts. Why are we waiting? Why are we waiting? You know, if then, why not now? And it's on a poignant level. When you read stories, which I used to read, I don't anymore, many stories about people in concentration camps and other very difficult situations, those who could bring music, those who could bring art, those who could bring poetry into those situations, that became the light. That was the light that kept them going in very difficult circumstances. Creative beauty. And just one last thought before I stop. In all our discussions, we had a week of discussions about what is joyful art, what is spiritual art, and so on. And there's a natural pushback that says, well, that doesn't mean it has to just be angels and flowers. You know, people suffer, life is real, there's hard things, and boy, do we ever know that. So it isn't a question that we always pretend that everything is good, or that the only creative feeling I have within me is a positive one, because not everything is. There was a woman in Assisi when I was there. I went to visit her. She had cancer. We had a very nice visit. She thought she was going to get better. Just without any warning, she died just a couple of days ago. Vinaya, for those who know her. Her husband was absolutely devastated. You know, they were a very, very close couple, and now he's a single man. You can't pretend that's not happening. If you want to paint that or dance that or put that into poetry, it can't just be all, you know, pinks and yellows and greens. There's going to be a lot of shadow in that picture. So it's not the presence of shadow. It's only seeing the shadow in relation to the light. Even if that light is just a pinpoint up in the corner, wherever we are, whatever we're going through it in relation to that light. You know, what's happening in our society now is there's no light, there's no pole star, there's no agreed upon upliftment. It's just, everybody's just moving the pieces around like this. But Master came, the Masters come, Jesus, all the Masters, to help us to see whatever we're going through in relation to the light, and to constantly, even from the shadow, be looking at the light. This is not a small challenge, but for this hour were we born. God bless you.
Let's take a moment of silence.